All right, let's jump right in. Today, we've got a bit of a mystery on our hands. A real biological whodunit, actually. It's a story that stretches all the way from the forests of France to the Siberian wilderness. And you know what? It all kicks off with one tiny but very fast-moving suspect.
And here it is, a dispatch straight from the front line, a report out of Siberia that's pretty alarming. It says this tick, whatever it is, isn't just there, it's multiplying, a lot, and it's carrying a whole bunch of nasty infections. So the big question is, who is our culprit?
All right, it's time to put a name to the face, so to speak.
So meet Dermacentor reticulatus. Yeah, it's a mouthful. You might know it as the ornate dog tick or the meadow tick. Now, for the longest time, this little guy was mostly just a problem for animals. But oh boy, that is changing, and it's changing fast. Here's the bottom line. Wherever this tick goes, disease is sure to follow.
Okay, so this is where the story gets really, really weird. It all comes down to the map. See, for decades, this tick's territory was, well, it was bizarre. It had this very specific, very strange pattern.
Imagine this. For as long as anyone can remember, this tick's population was literally split in two. You had the western bunch hanging out in places like France and Germany. Then, way over on the other side, you had the eastern crew, all across Poland and Russia. But right in the middle, nothing. A huge empty gap, kind of like a no-ticks land, where they simply could not survive.
But then the 1990s hit, and suddenly something changed. Both populations started marching toward each other. They began rapidly filling in that gap from both sides. And that is the core of this whole mystery. These two groups, kept apart for who knows how long, are finally meeting in the middle. Why now?
So, what changed? What on earth allowed this tick to suddenly conquer territory that used to be completely off-limits? To figure this out, we've got to follow the clues.
Okay, clue number one. Our first big suspect is something we hear about all the time, right? Climate change. The conditions in that old no-go zone are they're not what they used to be. Not at all.
Let's break this down. Back in the day, that middle zone had these brutally cold winters with not a lot of snow. That's a deadly combo for a tick, because the frost will go super deep into the ground where they try to hide. But now, the winters are warmer, there's less of that deep frost, and the seasons are longer, which gives them way more time to be active, to feed, to breed. You get the picture. It's like the walls of their prison have just melted away.
And we've got the numbers to prove it. We're talking about a rise in average temperatures in Northern Europe of about 1.5 to 2.5 degrees Celsius. Now, to you and me, that might not sound like a huge deal. But for a tiny little creature living right on the edge, that is literally the difference between life and death.
But hold on. Climate isn't the only bad guy in this story. Oh no. It turns out we've been helping too. We've basically rolled out the red carpet for this invader.
Think about it. We've accidentally built the perfect superhighway for these ticks. You know, big changes in farming meant less pesticide and more unused land just sitting there. We're reforesting and creating these awesome nature reserves, which is great, but it also connects habitats that used to be separate. Even our city parks and greenways have become these wildlife corridors, letting animals and the ticks they're carrying march right into our backyards. And that's not even mentioning all the international travel and trade that moves host animals all over the place.
So here's the kicker. This tick has a fancy scientific name for what it does, anthropophilic. All that really means is that it loves humans. Well, not us specifically, but the worlds we build. It doesn't just put up with us, it absolutely thrives in the environments we create. We've built its dream home, and now it's moving in.
So, okay, we've kind of cracked the case of how the tick is spreading. But why should we care? What's the big deal? Well, the big deal is what it's carrying on the inside.
Now, this list you're seeing, it's not even the complete list, but it's a pretty nasty lineup of pathogens. And just look at the variety. We're talking everything from bacteria that cause diseases like rickettsiosis, all the way to really dangerous viruses like tick-borne encephalitis. Yeah, the one that can mess with your brain. The point is, this one tiny bug is like a little delivery truck for a whole menu of serious diseases.
And if you thought that was bad, it actually gets worse. This isn't a simple one tick, one disease kind of deal. No way. Scientists are getting really worried about something called co-infection. That means a single bite can infect you with a whole cocktail of different diseases at the same time. And you can imagine that's a nightmare for doctors to diagnose. The symptoms get all jumbled and confusing, and it's incredibly tough to figure out what's really going on.
And don't think this is some rare one-in-a-million thing. It's not. There was a study in one part of Siberia, right in the middle of this new expansion zone, and the results were just staggering. Almost 74% of the infected ticks they found were carrying more than one pathogen. Just let that sink in for a second. In one single sample, they found a tick carrying markers for 4 different diseases. 4. So as these ticks march into new territories, they're bringing this massive threat with them. The threat of complex illnesses that are a real puzzle to diagnose. This isn't just a case of a spreading tick anymore. This is a public health crisis waiting to happen.
So this whole story of the ornate dog tick, it's a huge warning sign, right? It shows us exactly how climate change and our own actions can completely redraw the map for a species, and with some really serious consequences. And it leaves us with one pretty heavy question. We figured out this invader's story, but as our world keeps changing, what's the next one?